Hi, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. And I'm going to interrupt our Pro-Life 101 theme this season for some breaking news that I think you will want to hear about. So this Saturday, we had two Students for Life team members arrested. They were arrested in front of the Washington, D.C. Planned Parenthood for simply, get this, trying to sidewalk chalk on a public sidewalk the phrase Black Preborn Lives Matter. I just wrapped up a live webcast with these brave and courageous young people, Erica and Warner, as well as our staff general counsel, Zach Kester, and Reverend Dean Nelson, our partner in this event with the Frederick Douglass Foundation. I think you're going to listen into this conversation. There's a lot of details, a lot of facts we have to go over, and I think you'll be inspired hearing about Erica and Warner and their story. So take a listen.
But for any looking on, this is no time to be silent. And make no mistake about it, the radical left wants to silence pro-life Americans. Just recently, we saw the arrest of Students for Life of America. A group of students were arrested for writing Black Preborn Lives Matter outside a D.C. Planned Parenthood clinic. I mean, the radical left celebrates those who defend abortion, but they would prosecute those who stand for life. Because of what you've done, life is winning in America. It's winning in one other way that I think is worth remembering. I think life is winning hearts and minds in the rising generation. I think the truth about abortion is being told. And this new generation is choosing life. The rising generation is more pro-life than ever before. Young Americans are embracing the sanctity of life in record numbers, more and more every day. Young people today are rightly seen by the tens of thousands on our national mall as a new pro-life generation, and so they are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Hawkins, President of Students for Life of America and Students for Life Action. And I wanted to come to you live tonight with a few of my very good friends because we have a lot to talk about. So if you've got questions, feel free to put them below because we're going to be talking about what the heck happened this Saturday on August 1st in front of the Washington, D.C. Planned Parenthood abortion facility. As many of you all know, or Students for Life leaders, you know this Saturday was National Pro-Life Gen Sidewalk Day. And in fact, across the country, pro-life student leaders gathered to pray in front of Planned Parenthoods and other abortion facilities, as well as counsel women and sidewalk chalk right on the streets and sidewalks leading into Planned Parenthoods to offer help and practical support to women facing crisis. Because of what's been happening across our country with this very important discussion about Black lives and how Black lives matter, Students for Life partnered with our friends at the Frederick Douglass Foundation, and we decided that we wanted to add to this very important conversation. We wanted to talk about how Black lives really do matter, and that when we speak about Black Lives Matter, we need to be talking and calling into account one of the leading killers of Black lives, and that's the abortion industry, led by Planned Parenthood. In fact, every single day, Planned Parenthood aborts 360 preborn Black children. And Planned Parenthood's own employees, now in an open letter just last month, have cited and acknowledged Planned Parenthood's racist, eugenicist past and their founder of Margaret Sanger. But we can't just say that was in the past. We know today Planned Parenthood is still actively practicing racism. The fact that 4 out of 5 of their Planned Parenthood abortion facilities are in walking distance from minority-dense neighborhoods, or that the abortion rate for Black women is 5 times higher than the abortion rate for white women. This is an injustice that's happening in our nation. It's not something just happened in the past. It's happening in the present. And we, the pro-life generation, want to ensure this racism stops, so it's not in the future. And that means we need to call Planned Parenthood to account. They need to be defunded of our taxpayer dollars, all 500 million of them. And we need to do more. So that's why we partnered with our friends at Frederick Douglass Foundation and some other amazing, incredible organizations to join our pro-life sidewalk day and to go out in front of the Planned Parenthood this Saturday in Washington, D.C. We wrote the mayor of D.C. a letter and told her in advance of what we were planning to do, because she had painted the streets with the slogan, Black Lives Matter, and then allowed protesters without a permit and with permanent paint to add on to her mural to say, defund the police. That meant that the mayor has opened up the streets of D.C. for public expression. So we gave the mayor a time period that she could respond to us in. We applied for a permit to gather with all of our social distance regulations and our masks, and we went out in front of the Planned Parenthood. We received a call from the Office of Special Events who said the mayor's office had contacted them. They requested specifically that when we go to paint our slogan, Black Preborn Lives Matter, on the street in front of the Planned Parenthood, which was our request, that we use temporary paint, which we complied with. We never heard directly from the mayor. We never got a response until Saturday morning at 4 a.m. when our team arrived at Planned Parenthood with Students for Life leaders, Frederick Douglass folks, all kinds of leaders and movement and shakers, and we saw the mayor's response in 6 police cars. We were informed at that point that anyone who attempted to paint in the street, even with temporary paint that could be washed away, would be arrested. Being good pro-life activists, we always have a backup plan. That's one of the things we teach you at Students for Life, always have plan B. We came with our sidewalk chalk because every single Saturday, sidewalk advocates who are there in front of the Planned Parenthood chalk on the sidewalk. Every single Saturday across America, pro-life activists sidewalk chalk on public sidewalks in front of abortion facilities. So we started chalking our message, Black Preborn Lives Matter. And for that, 2 Students for Life leaders were arrested. They were arrested on a misdemeanor on the charge of defacing public or private property, like they've never heard of a bottle of water. This was outrageous. Our rights were infringed upon. We were told we could not speak. And the mayor of D.C. has taken a stand, and it's actually called viewpoint discrimination, because she has allowed certain groups of people to write without a permit and permanent paint on public streets, but she has threatened arrest of us, the pro-life generation. So tonight, I would like you to meet the 2 courageous Students for Life leaders who risked arrest and actually were arrested for simply sidewalk chalking on the street, actually on the sidewalk in front of the Planned Parenthood in Washington, D.C. So I first want to bring on Erica Caprioletti. Erica is the president of Students for Life at Towson University. Their group is called Tigers for Life. She leads that group on campus. She has been an intern with Students for Life Action and been involved. She has been a fellow with us, a Wilberforce fellow. Anytime we do anything amazing in Washington, D.C., Erica is always one of the first ones to join. So Erica, welcome. Thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you, Kristen.
And I also want to bring in Warner DePriest. Warner is a philanthropy advisor with us at Students for Life America. So he works full-time in our headquarters office in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and he's also a part-time MBA student at Colorado Technical University. Warner is actually part of a sidewalk advocacy team. If many of you know Dr. Michael New, he leads up this team in front of the Planned Parenthood every single weekend. And Warner has actually been chalking in front of that Planned Parenthood, the very same spot, more than 20 times this year. So Warner, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Kristen.
We actually, at the Students for Life team, we had a free Erica and free Warner 2020 hashtag going on Saturday after you all had been taken away and arrested and held in a jail cell for 45 minutes. I also want to bring on our attorney, Zach Kester. He is executive director at a group called Charitable Allies. They work with pro-life nonprofits and, Christian nonprofits across the country. We've also recently brought him on the team at Students for Life because of this case as our general counsel. I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into when he wrote this simple letter to the mayor. So Zach, welcome. Thanks for joining from your house tonight. Zach's in Indiana, Erica's in Maryland, Warner's in DC, and we're also bringing on my good friend Dean Nelson. Reverend Dean Nelson is the chairman of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. He serves as the chairman for the board of the foundation, as well as the chairman of the board of the Douglass Leadership Institute, which is a national education and public policy organization that has representatives and groups all across the United States. Reverend Nelson also is the executive director of Human Coalition Action, and many of you all know Human Coalition. So, and I've been getting Reverend Nelson Dean into trouble for years, so I'm really thankful for his partnership on this effort. So, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I thought it would be helpful, when we have kind of situations that happen like this, you might see something, a clip, Erica and Warner being carted off to jail. It's everywhere. You might see, a news story. Dean was just on EWTN tonight speaking about this case. But I think sometimes it's helpful to get like everybody on the same page, provide the backstory, provide the context, and even have a way for you to ask questions. So don't forget, you can be asking questions. I'm going to be asking them of Erica, Warner, Dean, and Zach here in a second. So Erica and Warner, I want to ask you some very specific questions about what happened on Saturday. Warner, you go in front of that Planned Parenthood every single weekend to counsel women who are in crisis. And you're always there talking messages.
Yes.
Was what you were doing any different? What was the difference this week?
The difference this week, Kristen, is that we had our wonderful partners with us. We were met with 6 police cars. When I got there, it was at 5 a.m. From what I understand, we could no longer paint. When I tried to sidewalk chalk with Erica, we were arrested. We were thrown into a paddy wagon. We were taken to jail. We were put into a jail cell for 45 minutes, processed, given the citation for defacing public-private property, and then Eric picked us up.
And then you came back to the rally,
Exactly.
And you spoke. It was great.
It was a good time. The rally was. The jail sucked.
Was it scary being arrested?
Yeah, it was traumatic. I'm outraged. It was a violation of my and Erica's First Amendment. It was viewpoint discrimination, clear and simple.
Now, Erica, I guess this question's for you, and it's for both of you. I think maybe you can answer it. When you made the decision to sidewalk chalk, when we were told you can't paint, when Tina, our executive vice president, Students for Life, started sidewalk chalking, she got in trouble. The officer said, "I'll arrest you if you continue." She stopped. You all knew when you picked up that chalk that we were going to be testing out if Mayor Bowser really was going to infringe on our rights. I guess the question, maybe your parents might have asked you this, what possessed you to do that? Because this is a very parent question, right? What was going through your head when you decided, I'm going to pick up this chalk and I'm going to write this message, even with these guys standing right here?
Yeah, Kristen, honestly, I honestly don't know. I would say that essentially, if they tell me to stop today, stop from sidewalk counseling today, what tell them that I can't stand in front of Planned Parenthood tomorrow? Where does this all stop? Mm-hmm. If they silence me today, will they ever stop? Mm-hmm. That was essentially what was going through my head this entire time.
You know what I find so interesting is I was down on DC for the first time since March, just on Monday night, and I've been watching on the news all of the protests and things that are happening, but there were restaurants, hotels I've stayed in, boarded up, graffiti all over the place. I mean, it looks like a civil war, a literal civil war is happening in our nation's capital, which, I mean, it may be a figurative war that's happening and rhetoric that's happening right now, sadly. But it was very upsetting just to see what Washington, D.C. has become. And I'm sure Portland and Seattle are way worse. But then to look, and we looked up how many people have been arrested for civil disobedience, for vandalism, for breaking and entering, because of these protests have been happening. There were only 4 people who've been protested, and all the craziness that's happening. And then yet on Saturday, 2 pro-life students were arrested. I don't know, that made me more angry. I wish I would have before I went on Fox News, I would have done a little tour of the city because I think I would have been more angry when I was on TV because I don't know, it really bothered me. How do you think, because of this happening to you and being arrested, do you think it will stop people in the future, other pro-life students in the future, from being bold and going outside with counseling? What's your hope that other students, other young people who see what you've gone through, what do you hope that they take away from this, Erica?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do think a lot of students, I was talking to a lot of students, and they do worry about the future implications of getting arrested. We were charged with a misdemeanor that day, and they are worried about what impact that will have on their future, what impact that will have on grad school and future employment. And that is a real consideration when essentially practicing your First Amendment right today. And unfortunately, they do have to take that into account. So students were scared, and they have every right to be afraid that they are no longer allowed to practice their First Amendment. And unfortunately, that is the world that we live in today.
Yeah, that's absolutely wrong. Zach, I don't know. I mean, there's so much I can say, but you're the legal expert, so I'll let you talk. What did the city do wrong here? Was this a true violation of civil liberties?
Oh, absolutely, in several ways. So when the mayor spoke, when the government spoke and wrote Black Lives Matter on the street, that's government speech. But then when they allowed the Black Lives Matter movement to write right next to that, defund the police, the mayor opened the city streets as a public forum for free expression. And once there is a forum open, the government may not discriminate on the basis of viewpoint. And at the end of the day, that's what they did here. They squelched a pro-life view because it was unpopular. As you know, this mayor has deep connections with Planned Parenthood. She even signed an ordinance in D.C., a bill in D.C. On Planned Parenthood property there. So she basically took the not just the political side from a policy perspective, but she used the strong arm of the law. And the officers acted under color of law and arrested Warner and Erica for sidewalk chalking. In addition, the 6 cruisers that were there the day that you all appeared to paint, as you had indicated to the mayor would happen in the letter. That was also an unconstitutional deprivation of rights because, again, it was an open forum, and Students for Life of America staff and volunteers and the students, had a right to do that, just as the Black Lives Matter protesters were given the right to write on the streets as well.
Have you ever seen, I guess, in your experience and years as a lawyer, a case so outrageous as this? I don't know. It's so very clear. People are looking around. They're like, there's got to be more to the story because this is so clearly wrong. I'm like, I know, that's our point.
That is the point. It is so clearly wrong. As you saw, Vice President Pence spoke about it today. It's incredibly important. And it's just straight up wrong. There are more egregious cases of, say, police brutality or something. Sure. But in terms of a First Amendment, associational, expressive rights being so clearly just absolutely hammered in a couple of different ways, this is pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I would say so. I do want to make it clear, though, we are not upset with the police department. No one there was upset with the police department. Many times when we go out, Students for Life, Erica, you've been out there with us to different events before. We're often very thankful that the police are there to protect us. And we knew that if an Antifa crowd would have descended upon us, the police officers would have actually been protecting us during the event. So I want to make it very clear that this is not, our, suit that we're going to be bringing against the city and the mayor for, chilling our free speech rights, for silencing Erica and Warner and all the students and all the pro-life leaders who are gathered. it's not something against the police, because we are so grateful. I can't count how many times police officers have ensured. I'm actually looking at a photo right now on my desk of a protest event we did, and we were descended upon by pro-abortion protesters who got extremely aggressive with us, and it was the police who kept them back. And when we asked the police officers at the scene, why are you doing this? Who you report to? And they were very clear, Zach, like, we report to the mayor.
That's right. And they were acting at the express request of the mayor. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And frankly, they were almost apologetic about the fact that they felt like they had to do that. Ultimately, the police chief in D.C. does report to the mayor. And so if the mayor wants to use the strong arm of the law, she can.
Yeah. Okay, so some of the questions we're getting in, before I go to Dean, I want to get some of these legal questions out of the way. What are the next steps for Erica Warner, and what's the next steps for the pro-life movement, Students for Life and Frederick Douglass Foundation, who were hosting this event?
Absolutely. So Erica and Warner, they will be hiring a criminal defense attorney to help them deal with the misdemeanor in Washington, D.C. We think that will get resolved relatively quickly. In a satisfactory manner. Basically, we think the prosecutor will ultimately dismiss it. And if the prosecutor doesn't dismiss it, then I would expect that the defense attorney would file a motion to dismiss, and a judge who's acting within the law, I believe, should dismiss those criminal charges. In terms of Students for Life of America and the other students who were there and who saw what happened, wanted to paint, wanted to write on the sidewalk, and were prohibited from doing so by the express words of the police, they all have a ripe cause of action, a ripe claim against D.C., the mayor and law enforcement and the city, for their violation of rights. So they'll be able to bring federal litigation in the federal district court in D.C. With various First Amendment claims, viewpoint discrimination, prior restraint, some other things. And it's very possible that Erica and Warner might also, in addition to those claims, be able to bring a type of excessive force claim around using the strong arm of the law and the paddy wagon in the jail cell to intentionally chill speech. I mean, there's some significant sort of damages there, and they have those claims as well. So I think the next steps really then become federal litigation, Kristen.
So this is going to be a long fight. Anytime you hear the word litigation, just know it's going to be a while. But this is something that we have to step up on. That's why we brought you on, Zach, full time on our team, because we know this is an egregious this is an egregious attack on all of our rights as Americans, regardless of whether or not even you're pro-life or not. You should be concerned about this case and what is happening here in Washington, D.C. And so we know we have to speak out, and we have to stand up for our rights, or you'll lose those rights, right? That's time and time again. We know that. And that's why I'm so grateful for what Erica and Warner have courageously done. And I think it's a very sad state of affairs that it took arrests of the two most unlikely people to be arrested ever to get this type of attention. And in fact, and what's really frustrating is I've been fielding media calls and calls from different reporters for the past 3 days. I have yet to be reached out to by CNN, MSNBC, New York Times. You know who I'm getting at. The conservative, maybe the press that maybe it's not conservative, but at least allows conservative voices to speak, has reached out, wanted to comment, wanted to know what's going on, wanted a picture of Erica and Warner. They want their contact information. But we have gotten absolutely zero, inquiries from what would be considered mainstream left pro-abortion media. And that to me is shocking, because this isn't really this case should be actually more than just what our message was, which our message is extremely important. That's why I want to go to you, Dean. Why were we doing this, Dean? Why is it so important that pro-lifers continue to speak up about and out against the racist history of Planned Parenthood and the racist current business practices of this organization?
Well, it was a pleasure, first, let me say, Kristen, to join you guys as we have over the years. This is a huge opportunity. I mean, as you would know, during the first abolition movement, there were black people who were freed as well as slaves, former slaves like Frederick Douglass, who fought alongside white abolitionists to see slavery ended in America. Similarly, we saw in the civil rights struggle many Catholic leaders that went down to the South, Jewish leaders that came and they marched with Dr. King and with others, all really for advancing civil rights for all people. And so I believe that's why we were doing this. That's why we're fighting together. It is not one group, but it is all people of goodwill who really believe not just quote unquote in the sanctity of human life, but they believe, particularly after watching, situations like George Floyd, that we are all, human, and we want to afford, dignity for all people. And so I'm so pleased to be able to have the Frederick Douglass Foundation with the, just the history of Frederick Douglass to be a part of this fantastic new abolitionist movement.
What did you do? So when we were calling it audible on the street there, and I was working from home in my pajamas, hindsight, I really should have had hair and makeup done while this was happening because I was rushing at the last minute. I'm getting calls from the street. Tina's like, Erica Warner just got arrested. And then I hear Dean's leading us on the prayer walk. So tell us about the prayer walk you led everybody who was on the street at, when we had to kind of change up and we had to wait for Erica and Warner to get released from jail to continue our event.
Well, you said earlier you teach your students to have a plan B. So sometimes in the civil rights struggle, we also have a C and a D. So when we heard about it and we knew that we had the opportunity for a few hours to do something before the press event, I simply remembered that just about a mile away, there was one of my favorite locations. It's a Frederick Douglass marker. It's a home, actually, that Frederick Douglass lived in for a short period of time with a memorial to him right behind the Supreme Court. So I thought, man, what significance would this be for us to be able to be there behind the Supreme Court at Frederick Douglass's old home and landmark? And we had a fantastic time of prayer. We even had one of our civil rights attorneys, African-American woman who lives here in the D.C. metro area, come out and she spoke to us. And then we decided to march straight down 4th Street, 1 mile down to Planned Parenthood. All 40 of us, young people, older people, black, white, some folks from the Washington, D.C. So it was a fantastic display of unity, standing for righteousness and justice.
I'm like tearing up because I'm still so upset that I wasn't able to be there with you guys on Saturday and be there in person and to be able to witness that. Dean, I guess I have a question for you that's a little bit more sensitive, and this isn't on the script, so maybe I shouldn't ask it. I don't know, but I feel like it's a question that I hear a lot, and you and I have had a lot of real conversations over the years about things, but I feel like a lot of times we hear from white pro-lifers. I know this racist history of Margaret Sanger. I know I've watched Maafa 21, which, by the way, if you haven't watched Maafa 21, MAAFA21.com, you need to go watch it. It kind of goes through the whole history of eugenics in America and how, Margaret Sanger was, involved and a leader in that movement and came to found the National Birth Control League, which became Planned Parenthood. But I feel like there's a lot of white pro-lifers who say, I'm not black, so I can't speak about Planned Parenthood's racism. What would you say to a pro-lifer who says, I want to speak out against this, but I want to make sure I'm doing it in a racially sensitive way, that I'm not offending somebody when I speak about this?
Yeah, listen, I understand within our culture that if you're white, sometimes you may be a little bit concerned because we've created a culture almost that makes people even of goodwill feel like that maybe they don't have the moral authority to be able to speak to those issues. And so I understand that and that level of sensitivity. But I would encourage people to do exactly what you've done, and that is to identify people who are from diverse backgrounds, particularly African Americans, and to simply, have coffee, ask them, talk to them, particularly those from the household of faith. I mean, you would know that many African Americans who are believers don't think that abortion is something that we should be, advocating for. A lot of organizations like the Church of God in Christ, for which we have a strategic partnership, last year had a very strong pro-life resolution for their 7 million members. And so I understand that. I would also encourage them just to look back at history. Frederick Douglass wouldn't be who he is or was, if there was no William Lloyd Garrison. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke often, and even that letter from a Birmingham jail was to challenge, white clergy to come up and to stand up. And so I think that we have examples within our history that tell us that we should be doing that. And if they're a little bit concerned, tell them to reach out to me and the Frederick Douglass Foundation. We'll help to encourage them and give them some tools to embolden them to stand up and to, proclaim, righteousness and justice along with other folks who would share their viewpoint.
That's awesome. How do folks get in touch with Frederick Douglass Foundation and what you're doing? How do they get involved, whether it's joining or supporting? How do they do that?
Yeah, the best place is, both of our organizations, the Frederick Douglass Foundation, which is, they can find us at fdfnational.org, or on a very active group page on Facebook. On the Douglass Leadership Institute, which is kind of our training arm, we actually have dlinstitute.org, where they can go, or they can find us on a very active social media platform at Facebook, also at Douglass Leadership Institute. Those would be the best places to engage, but we have chapters in different places around the country. And wanted to say on July 4th, actually, in Rochester, New York, the home of Frederick Douglass, we had some of our activists that partnered with some of your students to actually paint Black Preborn Lives Matter on the streets. We did that, I think, without asking permission, but willing to ask for forgiveness. But we were met with a little bit of opposition. But we've been pleased to work with you around the country and look forward to going into cities to work with you and to stand with Students for Life again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the Rochester event on July 4th was so much fun. And I once again, stinking COVID, because I wish I could be out there. My family's still self-quarantining, so it's really hard that I have to watch all this happening, and I just get to be behind the microphone. But I'm so grateful that we have so many courageous people who are willing to go out and speak truth, even when it's difficult, like Warner and Erica. Okay, so now what are we going to do next? So I've been getting this question all week. We've had like 3 meetings today about it at our team, Students for Life. Poor Zach, like I said, he didn't know what he was signing up for when we asked him to write this simple letter. We are approaching 3 different cities. I'm not going to name those names right now. Writing those mayors letters. That's going to be public very soon. That have already, and Dean knows this, they've already painted their streets Black Lives Matter. They've already opened themselves up for this expression. They've allowed other groups to paint on their city streets. So we are approaching other cities. So we will be taking this show on the road, as they say, kind of highlighting this across the country, going out in front of Planned Parenthoods and really calling their racism to the forefront of hopefully the American psyche. The other thing we're going to be doing is launching a billboard campaign. I've been working on this for about 2 months, but I think now's the time to do it. So we're pressing the gas pedal down and going into cities and states across America to highlight Planned Parenthood's past and present racism. So we're going to be working on that. If you want to help us, contact the mayor of DC. We've already had, I think, over 2,500 emails generated to Mayor Muriel Bowser, Planned Parenthood's like BFF. You can do that. You can go to blackprebornlivesmatter.com. And it's our action page that we're all working together on. Dean's promoting, all the different groups are promoting. We're trying to get as many emails into Muriel Bowser's office. It takes like 30 seconds. And once you do that, by the way, you'll be connected with Students for Life and also Frederick Douglass Foundation. So you'll start getting connections with both of us. So just full warning. But we really want to generate as many emails and calls into the mayor's office. You can go to blackprebornlivesmatter.com. You can also go to Students for Life's website. I think I have a pop-up on the website. All right. So I want to thank you guys for getting on today. And like I said, thank you, Erica and Warner. If you all haven't watched the video of Erica and Warner being arrested, it's really a powerful video. Watching them trying to talk Black Preborn Lives Matter, and then watching the Reverend Dean Nelson go full Reverend mode on the police is masterful. I think we should just caption the entire speech, the impromptu speech that you gave there, Dean. It was fantastic.
You probably haven't seen me quite that motivated before. A lot of people sent me text messages saying, you're usually the calm, reasonable one. What happened to you?
Well, it was good. I woke up my whole family yelling, so I wasn't calm over here at all. But maybe
I was channeling my inner Kristen while you weren't there.
that was the problem. That was the problem. So I want to thank you, Dean, and I want to thank all of our partners who came out to participate in this effort. We had many organizations who, the Restoration Project are one. We had a lot of organizations that came out. Created Equal. I'm now they're coming to me, and I'm not going to know them all because I don't have them written down. But a lot of organizations are partner. I'm actually hoping that more pro-life organizations partner as we move on city to city to talk about this. This has been, I think, Dean, I mean, you and I first met in 2008. Was it 2008? I got connected.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Somebody said, I think it was Star Parker, that said, you got to call Dean, because I was trying to plan rallies in front of Planned Parenthood to call for them to be federally funded. And I wanted to make sure most of the people who came out didn't look like me. I wanted Black pastors leading the charge. And I said, but I'm new to this town. Who do I call? Star was like, you got to call Dean. And we've been making trouble ever since. But really, it's fascinating because I'm like, we've really, I mean, you think about, yes, we've been doing this since 2008, calling for Planned Parenthood to be funded, but really we've only been doing it for that long. And we've made so much progress in the pro-life movement. Planned Parenthood has been damaged, and they know they're damaged goods. The cracks in the Planned Parenthood Foundation are starting to show. The fact that they had 300 employees last month call out the racist business practices that they're currently practicing in New York State, to say that we no longer should have Margaret Sanger Square. That is huge. You've got groups like the Stanton Public Policy Center. They're calling for Margaret Sanger's bust to be removed from the Smithsonian. They were up in Boston, because I didn't realize this till a few months ago. Margaret Sanger, there's a statue of her on Freedom Trail. We've honored the founders of our country right there in Boston. It is time for a public reckoning about what Planned Parenthood does every single day inside of their abortion facilities, and the fact that they receive almost $2 million from you and I every single day to do this, to end the lives of more than 900 children, 360 of whom are Black babies. Like, this is injustice. If we want to talk about Black Lives Matter, we have to be able to talk about this. And it's not an easy conversation, and we recognize that. And I hope tonight, guys, we've given you some tools, some ways to talk, and to be hopefully encourage you to be courageous in this fight, to keep speaking truth. And by the way, look out for us, because we're coming to a city near you. Good night, guys.